Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 76. In the wake of a very disappointing Six Nations, we're trying to put a positive spin on what the future holds for England. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hi guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. Thanks for still being with us despite recent performances. I know we appreciate it, and I'm sure that the support will go a long way to hopefully getting the boys back on their feet. I'm joined, of course, by Dan. Hi, mate.
Hi, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay. Obviously, it's been a disappointing few weeks, but
yeah, but do you know what?
It's
going to make it. It's when we win the World Cup. This is going to make it a good story, isn't it? It would be boring if we just went all the way winning everything.
Absolutely, and let's not forget that 2015, following two Six Nations wins on the trot from the Irish, they came third rather than fifth, but they were a shadow of their former selves. So clearly these things happen. It's part of the growth process. That's the story that I'm sticking to. This is all part of becoming, a world-class side. You need to learn how to take not just the odd loss, not just the odd game that slips away from you, but how to take kind of periods of, problem periods, which is what they're in at the moment.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I'm actually glad we've waited till today to do the pod because it's given me a bit more time to get the perspective. Because when I first, thinking, Sunday, Monday, even a bit yesterday, when you're hearing things like, well, this is good for us, we'll learn more. There was a part of me that was quite pissed off, being like, no, that's not good enough. You need to put your hands up and say, we fucked up. We need to fix this. Because in my head, I was thinking, in actual fact, it almost gives them an excuse not to go out and fix it, saying, oh, this will be soul, this will be good for the soul and we'll character building.
Yeah.
But having over the last few days listened to the players and listened to sort of quite a few different sort of streams via media or whatnot, it's fairly clear when you hear the interviews that Eddie has laid it out to them. Right, some of you, this could be the end of the road. Others of you, I'm going to, this is the time. You show me what you're made of, or it will be the end of the road. So it doesn't sound like they are taking it lightly. And it sounds like actually what they're saying is right. This could be a positive step for them, and it genuinely could be what's needed.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think you're right. It's a mix, isn't it? It's not about making excuses, and it's not about saying, oh, well, it'll be all right. Because obviously it's only going to be all right if they can find out where things have gone wrong and kind of turn them around. But I do think, these guys are proud and they're not going to want to continue along these lines. And they know that, the expectations were high, not just from the fans, but from themselves. They intend to be the number one team in the world. They intend to win the World Cup. That is their plan within camp, or at least that's the impression that I get. So, this is going to be a real test now. To see, which of them has the kind of the mental muscle to kind of turn this around and get back to winning ways. Because as we keep saying, they don't become a bad side overnight. These are still good players. Some of them are still world-class players or on the fringes of being world-class players. And, that's not going to change. We can make excuses. We can talk about how tired they are. And I think there's a genuine concerns I think that we can take seriously, but ultimately, there are some fundamental issues, and they need to work out what those are, and they need to be able to deal with them.
Yeah, I think that's it, mate. I think you're spot on. It's all very well saying it's a learning curve, but it needs to be learned, and there is hard work ahead. And yes, there are reasons. The tiredness, I do genuinely believe there's legs in that. I do genuinely believe that needs to be looked at. But also, perhaps, to get to a point where we are physically and mentally strong enough to win a World Cup, you do need to be pushed right to the edge. And if that means, sacrificing some performances now, so be it. Mm. If there's no growth from it, then, yeah, disaster. But I just can't believe that with this team, with Eddie, with the coaching staff. I was there were a few times I was a little disappointed. I felt this Six Nations, we were a bit more reactive than proactive with regards to sort of maybe selections, sort of approach to the games. But again, that's something that I think we'll learn from. Let's not hide behind the fact there were a lot of our good players are not performing as well as they should have for whatever reason.
Yep.
So Maro of Atoje, he's not had the best performance.
No, massively. I mean, he's underperformed. Simple as that. He's a key part of this team. He's one of the guys that when he's firing on all cylinders, he raises the game of the people around him. And it makes him one of the key influences within that side. The loss of Billy Vunipola, it's the same thing. He was the same thing. He wrote, raised the game of people around him. Ben Youngs, the Youngs care matchup at scrum half was a key part of the way that this England team plays. And that's not to say that it's like, oh, it's okay if he's injured. We expect to lose. We obviously don't. But I think they'd gotten to such a kind of become such this formality of winning that revolved around players like these. When you don't have them or when they're not performing, because that's just as important, it influences the whole side. And I think that was one of the key elements, as you say, key players not performing to the best of their ability. I think Guscott was saying, on Saturday, 15 men, 10 performed badly and 5 performed okay, but there was nothing better than that. And that's the kind of the problem. You need the 10 to perform well and the 5 to perform superbly if you're going to be a top team. And ultimately, it's the discipline. We've talked about it over and over again. You look at Ireland by comparison. You look at Wales in that game against England, even though they lost. The penalty count. You just can't afford to be gifting points.
We can't win a World Cup with that penalty count. That penalty count has been a bit silly, and it's something that to me is actually my biggest concern. Is we don't seem to learn from that penalty count. Sometimes it's like, oh guys, come on! Like whether it's just an individual holding on to a ball that second too long, they know the score.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the difficulty, if we're going to look for kind of not excuses so much as justifications for certain things. Penalties given away for things like holding on. In the game of rugby now, there is an element of holding on. It's about gauging the right amount of time, yeah. Because you can't just immediately take your hands off the ball because it gets stolen. So there's kind of that time frame, and obviously every referee rests the games slightly differently. Some let you hold on a little bit longer. Some are absolutely on you from the word go. So I think in the early stages, Eddie Jones talked about, the best teams give away penalties. I think in some ways he's right. In the early stages of the game, when you're kind of getting a feel for the game and for the referee and the way he's playing the game, yes, you might give away the odd penalty doing things like just testing the limits. But it's about being able to react to that and change and kind of go, okay, we've been playing for 7 or 8 minutes now. We've got a pretty good idea of how long we can hold on to the ball. We don't give away any more of those penalties.
And yeah, that's exactly it, because that's what Ireland did. That's what Wales did. In fairness, that's what most of the other teams did. They gauged the ref early, whereas we didn't. We almost sort of think, oh, this is typically what a ref allows.
Yeah.
So we'll just play this way, and didn't seem to learn. I mean, if it was me, I don't know how practical this is. I would almost nominate someone in the forward, say whoever, for argument's sake, say Rob Shaw, to say, right, analyse what the ref is blowing up for early on. And then after, get to that 10-minute mark, say, right, boys, you can't do this because the ref is going to blow up for that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what you're used to. This is what this ref is playing. So this is how we have to play. Almost have somebody, or almost somebody from the side who can then run on that information.
Yeah. I guess you almost want that to be a kind of a given, though, don't you? That's the whole point of having these kind of leaders in the side. This is one of the things that they need to be doing. They need to be identifying these things, not just for themselves. One of my problems with Rob Shaw is that he does, although he's a hard worker, he does seem to do a lot of, and I don't want to use the word selfish because I don't think that's the right word, but a lot of what he does for himself. It's almost like head down, get on and do a job and just concentrate on doing your job to the best of your ability rather than look at the wider game and look at how you can influence the guys around you, particularly the less experienced ones. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, mate, I do know what you mean. To me, Rob Shaw offers so much in so many areas, but there are times where I worry that he's not a thinking player as much as perhaps you'd want him to be. Like, he doesn't analyze the game perhaps as much as you want. Like you say, I think some of what he adds, I think, is hugely valuable. Just that, undeniable 100% every time. Even if he has a bad game, he's having a bad game because he's a bit off form, not because he's not putting in every last bit of effort he has.
Yeah.
And there is something huge for that. But that's not, in this day and age, that I think there needs to be more. And there's room for that if other people, are covering, are thinking the games through. So to me, the player who I think came out almost strongest from the Six Nations was Haskell.
Yeah, well, he's certainly, there was a lot of question marks, weren't there? And when he was finally included, and I think when he came on, when he started against, did he start against France? No, he came on against France. So when he started, so the half or the 20 minutes he got against France, coupled with his game against Ireland, beforehand, a lot of people writing him off. I mean, we talked about it already. People saying he's going to retire. That's the end of rugby for the likes of James Haskell, particularly international level. And he not at all. He's come back, and I'm sure he's come into it saying, "Yeah, I want to play for as long as possible. I want to be part of that World Cup. But in the meantime, I just want to play for England." And yeah, he certainly put a stamp on the shirt. I'd be very surprised if he's not part of the England setup going forwards. For the time being, at least. Eddie Jones seems to like him. He works hard. We've talked about him loads. We won't go into it too much. But what's very interesting, so we might very much talk down the South Africa tour as being this sort of joke of a test. South Africa are terrible. It's going to be a whitewash. And yet, South Africa are poor at the moment, and I still expect a 3-0. But England now have something that they have to prove. The most important thing for England right now is that the next time they step out onto the field, they get a win, and a good one, because that changes everything. Right now, heads are down. Fans are sort of disheartened. Players, I'm sure, are disheartened. And the test for them right now is: can you turn around and get back to winning form, and put this Six Nations behind you as a bit of a brain fart or whatever you want to call it. And the South Africa tour is going to be key, not just to get the results, but to get put in the performances. And so. It's a bit of a difficult one, because on the one hand you've got the balancing act of who to rest, and should you be resting the guys they've played a lot of rugby, and on the other hand you've got this, they need to be as a team getting back on winning form. So it'll be interesting to see what he does and who he takes.
Yeah, I was going to say that's exactly the point I wanted to ask you, actually. Say, so with that in mind, because I completely agree with that, I think it's really important now. Would you go with a full squad, or would you still rest players?
So I think I referred to it a moment ago about Jerry Guscott's comments about the 10 bad players and the 5 okay players, and I think when he talks about the 5 okay players, he's talking about key influencers like your Farrells, like your Mako Vunipolas, your Itojes, probably Daly. But then I think. It's a difficult one, because is there value in saying, I'm going to rest Owen Farrell, Maro Itoje, and Mako? I personally believe there is. But if that's it, what I mean is there value in saying, I'm just going to take 2 or 3 of them out?
Oh, no.
Do you know you almost need to kind of go, I'm going to actually rest a good sort of 50% of this current squad, or certainly the starters, and I'm going to bring in new guys. Or you have to kind of say, you would have got a rest, but because of that poor performance in the Six Nations, you can't afford it now. You've got to go out to South Africa, and you've got to put in a performance out there now.
So my only problem is, at some point, I think these guys do need a rest, do need that period of time, mentally as much as physically, where they can just take their head away. I'm not saying it all has to be for this South Africa tour, but it's one of the last opportunities. I truly believe that they can't just push through every player until the World Cup now, because that would have been basically 4 years solid rugby with no real break.
So what is the balance? Because in theory, you take a team out to South Africa that isn't your full strength side. It's not. It's missing key players. Okay. on the one, you have to get a win, or really you've got to get 3 wins, but you've certainly got to go out there and you've got to perform. Do you say we're going to go and get a performance with players who aren't our first choice, and then where does that leave you when you come back? Or do you have to go? Do you know what I mean? It's quite a difficult one to know exactly what the right call is here, because on the one hand, I'm thinking we need to see the first team going out there and putting in a performance. But on the other hand, you're right. You can't expect these guys to just play solidly between now and the World Cup and then perform in the World Cup.
Yeah, so for me, and this is just my current thinking, I'm sure it'll change between now and the tour. I think you rest them. You put out. You still take a strong squad, because there's some players who don't necessarily need the rest because maybe they've been injured, they haven't played that much.
Yeah, perhaps like a Billy or a Daly.
But I think if you look at depending also what happens with sort of Premiership finals, Europe for Saracens, if the Sarries players, for example, progress in Europe, get to Premiership final, I think you say, let's give these guys a rest. Mm-hmm. They need the rest. Perhaps even extra guys. But looking at the Lions people, and that's who I say you rest it, because then I think the thing we need to bear in mind, even if we rest a lot of players, we still take out a really strong team.
Yeah, oh yeah, no doubt. And the guys, there'll be a lot of heart, and there'll be people playing to get noticed, and I'm sure they'll put in good performances, and they may well come away with 3 wins. I guess the problem is that if you come back having got those wins without your supposed kind of key players, you then bring your key players back in, and if things go bad, do you know what I mean? It's kind of, I don't know.
That's there's almost a part of me thinking, yes, of course, it's for key players, and it's their position to sort of be taken off them. But if, for argument's sake, a Luke Cowan-Dickie goes out there, if you rest a Hartley, for argument's sake, and a Luke Cowan-Dickie goes out there and has an amazing performance, then yeah, he stays, and it's up for other people to fight it back off him.
I suppose.
Henry Slade goes out.
Let's look at this for a minute. I mean, let's start in the backs. Okay, so Ben Youngs has obviously just had, because of injury, but he will have had most of the season off. Do you take him? He's rested.
Yes, I think of Ben Youngs. I think of Ben Youngs you do take, because you want to get him playing some rugby again.
And do you take a Danny Kerr who's played a lot of his games off the bench, and so he hasn't actually had as much to do, and he wasn't a Lion?
Possibly Danny Kerr because of not being a Lion thing.
Yeah. So then you rest Farrell. That's pretty much that's certainly one player Farrell that we're happy with, which is fine, because you take Ford, because at the moment there are question marks about what the correct setup is.
Yeah.
So if you're taking Ford and he's at 10, that leaves you with a simple solution, because we know that we've got a Tio and I think a JJ, neither of which needs to be rested. Tio's obviously had a lot of time off.
JJ, I'd look at resting.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think I'd look at resting JJ.
Fine. But that's easy enough to do. I mean, that's fine. So you've got plenty of options to fill that gap, as you've previously mentioned. You've then got, obviously, on the wings, Johnny May probably doesn't need to be rested. Anthony Watson, you might rest.
Yeah, I would definitely rest Watson.
You don't need to rest Daly. We've talked about Noel will be back from injury. You don't need to rest him.
Yeah, but it's not just so. From my point of view, I might even look at resting a Noel. I might look at resting a Daly. I know they've been away for injury, but the thing is, when you're out for injury, it's all very well saying you're not playing rugby, but you're still going through a very intense rehab. You're still pushing yourself very hard, and you're still putting strain on your body and mentally and physically. So I would still probably rest those guys and give the chances of a Denny Solomona.
So my concern, my worry is, what we don't want is for the summer tour to be a kind of a duplicate of the last summer tour, the one to Argentina.
Yeah,
I don't think that offers us the value.
I do get your point, and I don't have the answers. I just think, and this is, like I say, this is just my thinking right now. My thinking right now is there's more value in these guys having a complete summer off with their families, doing whatever it is they want to do, and then coming back to the World Cup, the sort of a World Cup season as such, because, well, I guess there's still a season to go. And then there's a summer, then a World Cup. So to almost come back and be like, right, it's a massive year, but I've had the best, I've had a really good rest now. I am ready for this year. I'm ready for whatever this brings.
Yeah.
And that's my sort of current thinking. But I also think you gain some things in that. So interestingly, here's actually something sort of slightly diversified. So Eddie strongly hinted that this may well be the end of a road for some players.
Name and shame.
I don't know who. He certainly hasn't. I'm trying to think who.
From the front back, Dan Cole maybe.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Hard to say with the second row because I think he hasn't brought in anybody else. He hasn't brought in anybody else to sort of, potentially be.
I don't think any of them have run their course.
Yeah. So then
the back
row.
It's not. Yeah. So sorry, I was saying that Dan Cole is not. I just think he's played a lot of rugby. He's had a good test. He's had a great career. I just think there's players now who are probably more suited to the current game.
Oh, no, I agree. I'm not saying that I think it's a bad call. I think it probably is the right move. You got young guys like Kyle Sinclair coming through and with their experience and their energy and everything else. Clearly you can't just be saving all of your quality players to come on for the last 20 minutes. You need to have quality players starting and finishing.
Yeah.
So I think he's certainly one. Hard to say in the back row.
But yeah, back row it is hard to say whether there's anybody.
Well, I think the trouble is
Haskell involved. I'd want Armand involved.
There's currently no one, I think, apart from Billy who's injured, who's absolutely cemented a position in the back row.
No, I agree. I completely agree.
And that's one of the problems that we've got. Our only sure thing is not even available to England right now.
So this tour, and luckily the back row don't seem to have the problem of perhaps a sort of exhaustion thing. This tour, I would probably take the back rows. I would take Haskell. I would take Robshaw. I would take Armand. I'd take Hughes if he's fit. I'd take Billy if he's fit, and Underhill if he's fit. I'd take them all and really try. Simmons, yeah, exactly. I'd take them all and really try and figure out who are my go-to guys.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and not just that, but your go-to sort of. What do you have? 4? What's a match day? It's one back row replacement, isn't it?
Yeah. So you'd have typically you'd have 4. So you'd have a 3 on the pitch and then 1 replacement for a back row.
So he needs his 4 to come out of this tour. I agree. And then in the backs, I don't think scrum half's in trouble. I don't think fly half's in trouble. I think if anything,
I'm worried about fly half.
Well, you say that, but I would say, looking at the Ireland game, the one moment in that game where England started to look like they had a little bit of something was once Ford came back on.
Yeah, so don't get me wrong. I've still got Ford. I've still got Ford involved, but I almost want there to be another option there as well, because I like the Ford Farrell 10-12 combination, but as we've seen, things can change quickly with regards to what if Ford breaks a leg towards the end of next season. I don't think we have an answer. We almost found that at scrum half with Ben Youngs when he was out. I want there to be another possibility there.
Well, I suppose we know that Farrell is a possibility there. So if something like that was to happen, you've got Farrell at 10 and you've got then it's your centres where you've got the extras and there are options.
That's true.
So I don't think there's any major problems there. I don't think JJ or Tio have signed a death warrant as far as their England career goes.
Not at all.
I don't think Watson or May have. Possibly Mike Brown.
So I don't think Mike Brown's played badly to not allow himself to continue. I think Mike Brown's just his career is coming to a natural end. I don't think it's because he's done anything wrong.
Well, we've said it. He peaked about 4 years ago, and all players have a peak, and after that peak, they slow. Not just rugby players. This is in anything, in any sport, in anything. And then you have a slow decline, and I just don't see him raising his game again back to where he was. That's ultimately the biggest problem, isn't it? So you have to ask: do you want a guy who is more than likely going to be worse in 2019 than he is now.
Yeah. There was the worry for me with Mike Brown, and again, this is not. I'm not having the dig at Mike Brown here. The worry for me is a few times just that yard of pace. I mean, we went through this chat, but Stockdale caught him out, Scotland caught him out. I think teams are starting to realise that actually.
Yeah, he's seeing him like a forward. A one-on-one with Mike Brown is okay. We can back myself. It's Mike Brown.
Well, I think it's sort of a one-on-one perhaps a tackle, but if it's like actually if we really attack him for pace, he won't. Whereas a Watson, although may not have had sort of best home fullback, you know pace. You know, if he is slightly out of position, he's got that gas to cover it. Whereas
I mean, Watson at fullback was unlucky. Okay, against France. You know, it was the sending off or the yellow card, which was, you know, one of those where, you know, you could give it or you could not. There was the try with Ireland, which, you know, has in hindsight been shown to be a knock on. Such is life, as we know. You know, so I think he's been a bit unlucky because I think things like that sort of stand out. But I don't think he's played badly at fullback.
No, I don't think he's played badly. And the thing about those sort of things, such as the Ireland try, all that stuff he can work on. It's not stuff that. Whereas I think my problem with Mike Brown is you can't really work on upping that pace a bit more. No. Whereas with Watson, if it's a slight mistake or, like you say, yes, a bit of bad luck.
These other guys we're talking about, they're currently on an upward curve as far as their career goes. Mike Brown's already peaked and he's on a downward curve. So I think if you look at it like that, you know, you want guys leading up to a World Cup who are getting better all the time, and ideally you want them to peak. Well, you know, at the World Cup, you people like your Maro Itojes, your Vunipola brothers, despite the fact that they look about 40. You know, they're obviously early 20s. You know, so these guys are just going to be getting better and better and better. And I think that's the key. You know, Anthony Watson playing fullback for Bath, playing fullback for England from now until the World Cup. He's going to be a considerably better fullback at the end of 2019 than he is now, and you know, and he's a good fullback now. So I think it's the right call. We'll see if that's what Eddie has in mind. But I think maybe that's another one. So yeah, the only two I can think of that potentially. Might be at the end of the road are Mike Brown and Dan Cole.
Yeah, and do you think Dylan Hartley's the right man to continue to lead England?
I just don't think there's an alternative for leadership right now.
It's a strong point. Owen Farrell potentially.
Well, I mean, we know that Owen Farrell's obviously, you know, Eddie Jones sees him as a leader, and yeah, he has the potential to do it. But I do think you need that leader in the forwards.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I don't think any of the others are doing it. You know, Rob Shaw, who is England captain for however many years, you know, he's not doing it.
He's I don't think you can go back to him being.
No, I'm not as captain, but I mean, but even if what I mean is, if Owen Farrell was your captain, you still need somebody to lead in the forwards.
Yeah,
not just be named the forwards captain or whatever they call it, but actually be, you know, a second captain playing in the forwards, and we don't have one.
Well, I think we do have one. I think Haskell could be that man.
Do you think?
But he's not guaranteed his spot.
Yeah.
But I think on the pitch.
Do you know what though? Haskell's the kind of guy though that is gonna drive that kind of. He's that sort of senior player that you want. That guy that's gonna be a leader regardless of whether he's asked to be a leader or not. We need more people to do that.
Yeah.
And I think if the senior players were all doing that, we wouldn't be having this conversation because it would be a simple, we don't need Hartley, we don't need the leadership. But equally, I don't feel like, it's a difficult one because of what I've just said about Mike Brown, because I feel like Dylan Hartley is no longer on an upward curve either. But do I think that with Hartley out injured, that Jamie George came along and really kind of stepped up and played considerably better than Hartley was playing for those first 60 minutes? No. Now, maybe that's just down to the fact that none of the England players were really stepping up. But I felt like Jamie George was more impactful for England when he came off the bench than he was starting.
Yeah, I mean, I think my thing at hooker is looking at
Cowan Dickey.
if you've got three hookers in England, saying Hartley, George, and Cowan Dickey. I think the two best are George and Cowan Dickey.
Yeah.
That's my issue with it. But do you know what I really want to see? And when you're saying from leadership, I think the dynamic has to change slightly. So you look at sort of Itoje. Do you remember when he was like whooping and doing all that stuff, and everyone was sort of half taking the mickey out of him? But that added massive energy. Do you remember him and the
Farrell,
sink?
Well, Farrell used to run in and do it.
Yeah, and I want that back with those guys. I want those guys to be able to be like, yeah, well, like really celebrating if it's a win. It adds that energy, and I want to see Sir Marrow doing that again. I want to see the Sink coming on and doing, doing his stuff. I remember on the Lions tour, him like grabbing Itoje, just seeing him just absolutely ecstatic because I think they'd turned over a ball or something, and I want those guys to be doing that. And that's not the old guys in the team. And this is nothing that's not who they are. But I want those new guys to come in. I want their personality to be able to show through.
Yeah.
Yeah, their personality, their energy to be able to show through. And yeah, you can still have an old guy to be like, calm it down, dickheads, come on, like, or take the mickey out of them, but without taking that away.
No, I 100% agree. And to be honest with you, I don't look at Itoje and Sinclair as the young kids coming through and looking for leaders to show them the way. I feel like they're doing that on their own. So I almost feel like they need to become leaders themselves and show everybody else, young or old, that this is the way we need to be. We need to be proud to wear the shirt. We need to be proud to win games, but we also need to be proud to win a line out or to win a scrum or to win a turnover, because all of those things kind of come together.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, there's a lot that needs to be looked at. There's a lot of sort of positions that need to be looked at. Have we got the right people? Because like we say, the World Cup is next year, but it's the end of next year. There's a lot of rugby that's got to be played between now and then. There is still time for someone new to come into that England squad to sort of get themselves settled in that squad and be ready to win a World Cup.
Well, there's a summer tour. There's two autumn. Is it two autumn tours? Well, not tours, obviously, but hosting two autumn tours.
There's one autumn. So there's the summer tour. There's the 4 autumn internationals. Obviously, the season. Six Nations, and then before the World Cup, England will have warm-up matches. Yeah. So there's a lot of international rugby to be played.
Yeah.
And there's time for these people to come in and make that position their own.
There's probably 15. There's probably a good 15 games before the World Cup starts for England.
So sort of 8, 12. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think there probably is. In my head doing the maths, I think there's spot on 15.
So that's a lot of caps.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. I think absolutely. I don't think anyone should be thinking, "Oh, this is all sealed now." I mean, if anything, because we are here to spin as positive a light on recent performances as possible. If anything, this has just sent a message to the English rugby playing elite to say, England are in trouble. You've got a chance now. If you thought that the door was shut, it's just opened up again.
Yeah, and it's. What I want to be careful for, though, I've read some things, and you were sort of quoting Guscott. I actually read an article he read, like, England need to tear it up and start again. To me, that's bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't need to do that. I don't think it's quite as drastic as people think. Like you were saying, 2015, like after the World Cup, it's like, my God, we're the first host nation to ever go out in pool stage. 6 months later, we win the Grand Slam.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't. We've got the players. We have got the players. We have got the skill. So that's huge. That automatically puts us in an amazing position. It's like, do you know what, guys? Yeah, we've played a bit shit, but let's start from a very basic. We've got the talent to win matches, to win a World Cup, to go 18, 19 games unbeaten. It's not let's put some of this in perspective. Yeah, there's shit that needs sorting out. Our attack, from the Italy game, some of those tries, I was like, wow, our attack's looking pretty cool. Yeah. We never seem to recreate that.
I know, it's so frustrating because I thought, to be fair, there was about 20 minutes against Wales, maybe 15 minutes against Wales, where I thought, at the beginning, this could be big.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it just seemed to fizzle out, and that was the end of that. We never saw it again. So I agree. It was there against Italy, possibly because they gave the line speed. They gave us a bit more time. It was there in that first 20 minutes against Wales because I think Wales were half asleep at the beginning of the game. They gave us time, but it seemed that as soon as the pressure was on, they didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, because like you say, at the end against Wales, like we were putting together some phases. We were starting to look like a team that could
against Ireland,
could really threaten. Oh, yeah, sorry, against Ireland. To me, a lot of it probably is mental. I think a lot of it is, and this hopefully is for wake up call, and not for 1 second. Like I said earlier, there was a bit of me a bit pissed off. Like, no, we just put our hands up and say we're shit. We need to sort things out. But actually, Eddie's not going to allow it to be shit.
No.
And if people don't step up, if people don't sort of go there with the attitude to move forward to improve, I have no doubt Eddie will be like, see you later.
Mate, well talking about it, I'm shocked and amazed that the BBC currently has an article that they feel they need to write saying that the Rugby Football Union says it doesn't regret extending Eddie's deal, and he retains the RFU's support. When was that ever in question?
Up. Yeah,
come on,
shut up.
He is still, without question, the most successful coach England has ever had. He hasn't suddenly become a shit coach because we lost 3 games.
Yeah, that's mate. That's
the media and as fans. That's what we need to not.
Right?
That's what we need to not do. We need to get behind these guys and say, all right, we're willing to give you a chance to go and sort it out, and we believe that you will do that. And, we look forward to seeing it happen. And that's why the South Africa tour is so important, because they need to get they need supporters back on their side.
So I think more important than the South Africa tour is the autumn internationals.
Oh, I mean, of course, particularly the game against New Zealand, because that's where it's and it's the big games against the big players, and it will be with the first team, the A team. And of course, results there make a difference. But following on from the results we just had in the Six Nations, if England go to South Africa and lose, or play badly, or both, I think it's just going to make it's digging that hole even deeper. It's going to make it even harder to get out of. I think they have to win.
So I slightly disagree, depending on what team you take out.
Well, that's the thing.
I think if you take out a second string team's not fair, but I think if you take out a team perhaps missing some big names because they've been rest, you go out there, even if you lose the series, but actually you perform well. I don't think that's the end of the world. I think it's the autumn matches that count. But if you go out to South Africa with a first team and lose, then I think you're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, South Africa are really, really shit at the moment.
Have I heard, and I may have heard this wrong though, in the summer, aren't South Africa allowing selection for all players because be wherever they're playing? So aren't South Africa now going to start picking some of the good players who they haven't been picking recently?
Oh, I've not read that. If that's true, that changes things.
I may be making that up.
Well,
but I'm sure I've heard that.
We'll clarify that for our next episode for sure.
Yeah, and if anyone knows, please let us know. Actually, so because I actually looked for that the other day and couldn't find an article. So if anyone does know, sort of South Africa, whatever the fuck's going on with South African rugby at the moment and their selection policy for the summer, guys, please do write in and let us know, because I think that will play a big part in perhaps Eddie's thinking come the summer.
At England Rugby Pod, guys, on Twitter and Facebook. Anything else? I'm trying to think. Like we agreed, for those that think we've been quite easy on England. We did say, look, we're going to do this. We're going to put the positive spin on things because that's what we're here for. We're supporting England to the World Cup. We believe that they can win it. That hasn't changed for us. Obviously, the results of the Six Nations are disappointing, but they can't change them now. And it is a case of looking forwards. There's no value in looking backwards, except for them, obviously, in terms of identifying what they need to get right. So the next big game is South Africa, and that's what we need to look forward to, which is why we're trying to be as positive as possible. But yeah, I think that's probably not a bad place to leave it.
Yeah, no. I think so. I think over the next few weeks, Well, I mean, there'll be different pods, but I think other stuff will come up that we'll want to discuss around the players, around going on. But yeah, for now, I think that's a place to leave it. And like you say, yeah, I mean, you and me had a chat, and we're like, look, let's keep this positive, but as much as anything, because that's where our minds are, and we can sort of only talk as we find. But also, I don't think we're being, I don't think we're being completely unrealistic. I don't think we're completely deluding ourselves.
No, 100%. On paper, these guys are still one of the best sides in the world, one of the best squads in the world.
Yeah.
And it simply comes down to players didn't perform. And there are lots of reasons we can give for that. I don't believe it's the wrong strategy. I think that the fatigue plays a big part in that. I think that plays a big part in people like your Maro Itoje's not jumping around every time they win the ball. You need energy to do stuff like that, and if you haven't got any, it makes it harder. Tough to do. So they know what they got to do. They got to go away and they got to do it. And we shall see how they get on in a few months' time, I guess. June
is for South Africa tour, but there's loads of rugby to be played between now and then.
And I think there is actually an England game against the Barbars, so we may well see some less familiar faces then, which might give us a bit of an inkling as to what we might expect on the tour.
Yeah, and guys, please keep tuning in, please keep listening, because we're going to be keeping a close eye on all the England players between now and that tour. We're going to be sort of looking and coming to you every week, sort of with our thoughts and findings around what's going on with everything England rugby, sort of.
Yeah, and let us know
moving towards this World Cup.
Yeah, let us know if there's anything specific you'd like us to cover.
Yeah,
it's always good to kind of guide how the episodes are going to go based on what you guys want to hear. So if you think of anything that you particularly like us to cover, let us know. We've done it before. It's always quite a nice way to do it. So keep tuning in, guys. As Dan says, if you get a chance, rate us, review us if you haven't already. If you have, thank you. Share with friends and family. Spread the word, spread the love. Keep coming back for more. We're growing all the time, which is great. Obviously, though, we just want that to keep happening. We want to get as many people as we can tuning in, so that by the time we get round to that World Cup, and when we do finally win it, everyone's coming to the right place to hear all about it. Until next time, guys, take care.
Thanks a lot, guys.